welcome to another episode of the Healthy and High Performing Podcast, where we help entrepreneurs and executives unlock increasing access to their best selves, level up their leadership, and scale productivity and profitability while restoring energy and vitality to their work and life. In just 15 or 20 minutes and 5 core questions, we'll help you create more clarity, align action, and accelerate results. My guest today is Helene Segura. Hope I'm remembering to say that right. Helene is a productivity and time management expert. And productivity and time management are often referred to as soft skills, but there's really nothing soft about losing $10,000 worth of productivity per team member per year. Through keynotes, workshops, coaching, and books, and on-demand videos, time management fixer Helene Segura reveals her mind-bending framework for decreasing interruptions, distractions, and lost time so that companies can spend more time generating profit. I love this topic. Welcome, Helene.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh man, so there's so much we could probably dig into. Why don't we dive in? Tell us a little bit about who your typical ideal client is and what is the challenge or challenges they're facing when they find you.
Sure. I have 2 different types. One is from an individual standpoint, and that individual is going to be one of the hardest workers in the office, but they are feeling overwhelmed at the end of each day. They find that they take work home more and more often and just feel like they're not making any progress, so they're frustrated. And then the second ideal client is made up of a team of those types of folks. So when I work with teams, either through coaching or presenting, we are figuring out what are the inefficiencies in the workflow. Are there duplications? Are there gaps? And how can we plug those time leaks so that way everybody can do the same amount of work in less time or get more work done in the same amount of time?
Yeah, I love that. I liked how you said time leaks. I mean, I feel like that's almost a good leading description of probably where we're gonna go with the conversation. But from the get-go, I kind of feel like there's the possibility for people to hear this topic and say, "Oh, get more done in less time." I think where have I heard that before? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on individual contributors and teams these days to do exactly that. I don't imagine that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Is we're not trying to squeeze even more out of people. It's, hey, how can you get more of that valuable work done and decrease the friction in your day? Is that accurate?
Exactly. And really, my overall goal is to help people live their best lives. And we do that by looking at how are you living your personal life and how are you living your work life, because everything just blends, it crosses over now. There are very few boundaries. And when we are struggling in one area of our life, it tends to bleed over into the other part. So I definitely don't want people to become robots, but I do want them to feel like they have more control over their time, more control than they think they have. So that way they can live their best life when they're not at work.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like work is really where we spend, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but the bulk of our waking adult lives, right? 8 hours a day, 5 days a week on average or more. And, it's really, from that standpoint, it's really very important for our happiness in life, the meaning we get from what we're doing with our time and, spend it away from people we care about. Let's hope we can get some satisfaction from a good day's work, right? So exactly. What mistakes do you see, when people come to you, what common mistakes do you see them making when they're trying to solve those problems? You said they're taking work home and frustrated, or there are basically teamwork issues. What it breaks you down, what are some of the common mistakes that people are making to solve those issues?
In no particular order. One is not pausing to strategize for how their day needs to go, how their week needs to go. A lot of people who are dog paddling feel like, I don't have the time to sit down and I need that 10 minutes to work on something else. But by pausing and triaging what the priorities truly are, that is going to help. Another huge challenge or roadblock is the desire to help everybody, which is a wonderful characteristic. But if your desire involves just dropping everything every single time to help everyone, then that will slow down your workflow. So I am in no way suggesting that you stop being a team player, but there are other ways to go about it.
Yeah, those are critical. I mean, I kind of feel like, good old Stephen Covey and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, said you got to stop to sharpen the saw, right? I feel like this is a version of that, a critical version. And I definitely practice some version of that myself. It almost does feel like a task, of its own nature, but considering how our days and weeks need to go and what's most important, and so that we can say no to everything, that's not as important, right?
Exactly. And I know that a lot of people are so task focused, they feel like they need to complete a certain action in order to feel like they've accomplished something. And if I could encourage folks to consider the act of thinking as an action, and if we did more thinking, which is the strategizing part, that would really help us. And something else that I encourage folks to do is to consider self-care a top priority before everything else. Because if you are not in good health, I mean, that's part of the title of this podcast. If you're not in good health, then it's really hard to be productive. It's really hard to live your best life. So I hope that everybody puts self-care, that sharpening of the saw, up at the top of their list.
I love that. And we could definitely dig more into that. But I want to talk just briefly about your second point, which was the desire to help everyone all the time. I mean, I happen to know that is a biological instinct, right? It's probably in our evolutionary history of, we're here to support the community and the team and the tribe or the pack or whatever, right? So there's this drive to be perceived and as helpful and a yes person, but we really can't do that these days, can we?
Right. That's really tough. I like to semi-joke around that I don't get called in to help in hostile work environments because people don't get along and therefore there are fewer interruptions. I get called into environments where folks feel so comfortable that they could just stop by somebody's desk or text them at any time of day or night. And once again, when we talk about crossing the lines and not having boundaries, some folks are afraid or shy about setting those kinds of expectations because we worry about hurting somebody else's feelings. And you mentioned a biological effect. This is also related to a personality trait. So if you fall into the category of nurturers, you want to nurture folks. You want to take care of folks more so than others. So that can be a huge productivity roadblock. And again, I'm not telling people to become these mean creatures, but at the same time, there's a time and place when we can help others.
So what kind of guidance do you usually give people around how to set expectations or boundaries?
When we are talking about an individual, so not the entire team is there, we take a look at, are there any patterns to who is asking you the questions? What are the requests that they're making? And if we can narrow in or narrow down, is it a specific person? Is it a specific position? Is it a specific department? Then we can approach that individual or that department and issue preventive strikes. So what that would look like is you identify the individual who asks more questions than others. Instead of waiting for them to ask, what if you set up a 10-minute quick chat every single week? And so that way you're asking them, hey, tell me about the wins that you've had in the last week. What do you have coming down the pipeline? Have you thought about any kind of contingencies or red flags that might occur? And those questions will be based on what are the patterns of their questions that they ask you. And by doing this preemptively, you're also coaching them up and helping them be more prepared for their upcoming week because they have to think about what they're going to say to you. And that can help cut back on a lot of interruptions.
That's a great tip. Okay. Are there any other, so that's the boundaries one. How about what kind of guidance do you give when it comes to pausing to strategize and your days and weeks? What are your tips there?
Set an alarm for the end of your workday, whatever time that is. If you want to stop working at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., doesn't matter the time, 5 minutes before you plan to shut down for the day, that alarm goes off, and I'd like you to do your 3+3. And what that means is think about what you have on your plate. Think about what truly must be done the next day. Not just something you thought of, but it truly needs to be done the next day. Otherwise, heads will roll. And identify those so you have a focus already when you walk in the next morning. You want to work on these 3 tasks as soon as possible in the morning and in between any meetings that you have. The +3 will be your backup, because I think we all know that a lot of times our plans can go awry and we get ticked off or upset or disappointed. And when our minds move into that negative state, we tend to basically go downhill productivity wise. So set your alarm for a 2-minute tantrum if things don't go your way, and the +3 becomes your backup. So if you're not able to get done your top 3, at least you are still working on the next level of priorities versus piddling around all afternoon in your email inbox because you were disappointed that your plan went awry.
Great tip. Okay, so you set an alarm for the end of your workday and you pick 3 critical tasks to work on the following day, as well as an additional +3 in the event that something shifts with your original list.
Right, exactly. And on some days, like those days where you have the back-to-back meetings, you might only have time for a 1+1. So it's also important to take a look at what you have the next day so you're creating that realistic to-do list. Because so many times we create to-do lists from stream of conscious and we end up putting 12 hours of work on there when we might only have 90 minutes total in between all of our meetings. So you're looking at your calendar at the same time when you're creating that 3+3 or the 1+1.
So that's an interesting point, right there. What would you say to someone who is a director or a high-level manager over a large team and is, over 80% of their work week is meetings? And what would you say in that case?
Without having done an analysis, my first question would be, when is the work getting done? When is the work getting done? Because if 80% of your time is being spent in the meeting, then who is doing the actual work? After that, I would take a look at what is happening in these meetings, because a lot of times there's either fluff in a meeting or there is no organization of a meeting and therefore time is not being utilized. There are a lot of 1-hour meetings on the calendar that could be handled within 30 minutes if people were prepared, had agendas, and had a chance to do some pre-thinking before they walk in. So 80% is a concerning number if that's the amount of time that they're spending in meetings.
Yeah, no, I share your concern there. And, I happen to know, like, a lot of those people, I know a few personally, they might say, well, a lot of it occurs after work hours when notifications slow down and I can concentrate, but that, that automatically means 50, 60-hour work weeks.
Right, exactly. And also to, I guess, create a caveat, if there is a C-suite level person in meetings 80% of the week, that is not quite as concerning, because if they're C-suite, they should have teams around them that are handling everything else that is occurring because of these meetings, all the actions that need to take place. My concern is when somebody who's not in the C-suite or not quite up to upper level management, and they're in meetings 80% of the week, because those are the folks who are supposed to be completing everything. So when will they have time if they too are in meetings 80% of the time?
Yeah. So great perspective. Great advice there. Are there any other like valuable free actions that you would offer to our listeners that if they want to start practicing your version of time management, with where might they start today?
Number one, I would start with a 3+3 at the end of the day. And so that way you walk in with a plan the next day. Something else I would do is create buffers in your schedule, especially if somebody has access to your calendar and can put items on it. I would create a 15 to 30 minute block of time in the morning, 15 to 30-minute block of time in the afternoon, so you have cushion time to handle the unexpected. One of the reasons why we feel overwhelmed is not just because people are contacting us, but also because we realize we are so scheduled out during the day that we don't have room to handle the unexpected. So if you can create that buffer time, morning and afternoon, psychologically, that helps relieve some of the stress that tends to creep in when we have more and more questions or requests being made of us.
Yeah, those are great tips. Are there any resources that you want to direct listeners to that can take this even further?
Sure. I have a page called timemanagementrevolution.com, and I have what I call a productivity Kickstarter kit. So I have different templates in there that I use with my clients for tracking time or planning time, or a very rudimentary tracking device that you can use for project management. So it's super simple just to help people get started, and various other tools in there that you can use.
Awesome. And that website will also be in the show notes. So I'm curious, we have a little bit of more time here. I want to dig into this a little more. So how did you arrive at the number 3 for, like tasks for a day?
For whatever reason, our brains like triples. Not necessarily doubles, not necessarily singles. And if you start looking for numbers that our brains like that are over 3, it's going to be most likely too much to handle in a day. So that's why I settled on the 3 plus 3, because 3 is a smaller number. It's a number that our brains like, and most of us can probably check off 3 items in a day, except on those days where we have all the back-to-back meetings. So that's where the number came from.
Gotcha. The real time tested experience and wisdom. Do you find, is there any kind of a work cycle cadence that you recommend? So for example, the one that I've sort of landed on is the 90-minute work cycle, based on ultradian cycles.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of that. There's a Pomodoro method where it's 30 minutes, 25 minutes on and then 5 minutes off. Basically, each one of our brains is completely different as far as our work styles. And then if you factor in that sometimes our brains like certain tasks and sometimes our brains dislike others, it's really hard to set an exact amount of time for task time. But if you, Timothy, already know that you can work solidly for 90 minutes and your brain is okay with that, that's what you need to keep on doing. But for a lot of my clients, especially if they have ADHD, then we talk about, all right, roughly how much time would you like to spend on this task? It might only be 12 minutes. It might be 47 minutes. It changes all the time. So we give each other permission to set an estimated amount of time and to either hit snooze when the alarm goes off if we like to keep on working, or if we realize we catch ourselves, our brain has already started to lose focus before the timer is up. Stop the timer, go for a quick walk to refill your water bottle, and then come back and start over again.
Gotcha. So is there kind of have you ever found like a maximum number of those that people can do in a work day?
No,
is it just kind of very individual?
Very individual, because it depends on their tasks. And also, a lot of folks who I work with, they don't have a lot of this type of time because they are so meeting out. Half of their days might be spent in meetings, and they only have these 30-minute or maybe even 15-minute blocks in between the meetings. So it actually turns into more of what can you realistically attempt to accomplish within these little blocks. So we talk about time estimation. If you have a 2-hour project and you never have 2 solid hours in the day, how might you break that down so you can grab a 10-minute task from it, a 15-minute from a task from it, and then slide it into the gaps in your schedule?
Wow, yeah, that's challenging, but I see a lot of value there. So I'm curious if, I always like to kind of surprise people with this last question, but if there's one question I should have asked you to be of great value to our audience, what would it have been? I mean, I know we've already covered lots of valuable things, but what should I have asked you?
I think you have covered everything. I don't think there is a question that you left off.
Okay, thank you. So do you have, is there any other like insight or principle on gaining high performance that you've kind of gleaned from your work?
As cheesy as this might sound, I
Mm.
think it's really important to know your why. Because when you are crystal clear on your why in your personal life, and then crystal clear on your why in your professional life, that just creates the clarity that you need to make better decisions about the next steps you're about to take. Because when we're not clear on the why for personal and professional, then the waters tend to get muddied and we have a lot harder time prioritizing, which means we have a lot harder time with time management.
No, I love that. That's definitely been one of the insights I've seen is the value of clarity is often unseen and kind of just you know, it's hard to estimate or hard to even conceive of, but just makes a massive difference, you know, when you have that personal and professional clarity about kind of your reason for doing what you're doing, your reason for being in that career or you know, business, and what you're here to do.
Exactly. I agree.
I love it. Well, Helene, thank you so much for your time. It's been great speaking with you.
Thank you, Timothy.